Hey, sorry guys, Professor Dogwood here. Trying to get those Pidgeys off the ledge. I mean, oh my goodness. And then there was a braviary that came. Do you have any bird poop on me? Okay, well, since we're on the topic of birds, let's talk about eggs today, okay? So, as you know, no matter the type of Pokemon, all Pokemon lay eggs, which is pretty cool. And like we talked about, Miss Morgan talked about yesterday, is even some mammals can lay eggs. So, just because a Kangaskhan, which is likely based on a kangaroo, she says, I don't know what a kangaroo is, I guess they have them in her world. So, even a Kangaskhan can lay an egg. I thought they were marsupials, but I guess not. So we're going to talk about some egg things today. You guys ready to learn some science? And then we are going to, you guys are going to do some fun activities along the way. So let's talk about eggs. We're going to watch a few videos in a minute. And we're going to watch how things hatch from eggs. And, you know, I've got a Fearow egg, which is just hatches out as a Spearow, which is pretty cool. But then they evolve into a Fearow. So I have that, and then I also have a Poliwag embryo in development, which is pretty cool. That somebody filmed, not me. I think it's Professor Oak that filmed it. I could be wrong. But before we get to that, what we need to talk about is the parts of the egg. So, if you have an egg at home, you can crack, if you have it that you want to crack open, those 2 eggs I gave you are for Friday. But if you have an extra egg lying around the house, but you do not have to crack one open, that is totally fine. What you are going to do though, if you want, is you're gonna lightly crack it open into a plate. Otherwise, I have a picture for you guys of an actual egg, and we're gonna talk about some of the parts that most all eggs have in common. Now, I sent you guys with some Articuno eggs, so take good care of those, okay? But if you have a Chansey, give it to her. She'll take care of it, don't worry. But what you guys might have at home otherwise might just be some, chicken eggs. That's totally fine. If you happen to have any like Blastoise eggs, that's pretty cool, but kudos on you for getting that out of the nest, because I'm scared of Blastoises personally. So let's talk about, I'm going to move you guys, sorry if it's a little shaky, I'm going to move you guys over here to this projector. I know the stuff that Rotom can do. I mean, they can be a lawnmower, a washing machine, and a projector. So what we're going to do is we are going to, let me turn off the light, and we are going to talk about some of the awesome things that are inside of eggs. So you might look at it and this doesn't look too appetizing. It isn't. But when it cooks up, it's delicious. And just like you wouldn't eat a raw piece of Tauros, you would want to cook it up. You want some nice cooked beef, because raw beef isn't so good and it's not good for you either. That's because basically what you're doing is you have these big proteins and you're breaking them down and you're kind of turning them into sugar almost. So it's the same thing with an egg, and that's why it turns, the kind of clear part turns white. So I'm going to try to, just kidding, I'm going to try to zoom in. Okay, so we have here, if you crack open an egg, I'm going to zoom out one sec, sorry. I'm an old lady with technology. Okay, so if you crack open the egg part that you see right here, but if you actually look around the outside edge, there's a thin thing that separates out here. So this is called the albumen. And so there are 2 different ones. There's a thin and there's a thick. So when you crack it open, the thin one spreads all the way out. I mean, not all the way out, it's still attached, but it spreads out. And then there's a thicker one that kind of is more gelatinous and kind of stays there. That's what we consider the egg white, because that's the part that turns white when you cook it. And of course here we have the yolk. And so what is the most nutritious part of it is the yolk, but it also is the fattier part of it and the more calories, and that's why a lot of people cook with just the egg white. It's good protein, it's lean protein, and there's not as much cholesterol, and that can be bad for some people, and it can be bad for their hearts. So that's why a lot of people cook with egg white. But the egg yolk, now if I'm a baby, I want all that protein inside of me. So that's why if it is a fertilized egg, and it's really hard to tell the difference between a fertilized and not fertilized egg, and the ones you get from the grocery store are not fertilized, so you don't ever have to worry about. And even if you get a fertilized egg, unless you put it in an incubator for 21 days, it doesn't become a baby. If you're just having it on the counter, it's not a baby, it's just a regular old egg. But if it were a baby, the egg cell is a little tiny dot right there. And even if you have a chicken egg at home and you crack it open, they all have an egg cell. You can see it's a little white dot in the yolk. It's usually towards the side. Sometimes it's underneath of it, depending on how it cracked. And depending on how nutritious the diet was, a lot of times, like, it sounds gross, but I do it all the time, I just make sure I wash my hands afterwards, is you can pick up the yolk just by itself if it is a farm egg usually. Sometimes the ones from factory farms, they break really easily. If it does, that's okay. But if you can't see it, it might be on the underside, and you can pick up, and that yolk has a membrane around it that keeps all of the yolky parts inside. And that is the same thing that, you know how we have a belly button? And then that belly button attaches to something called the placenta, but that's inside of the moms that helps give food for the babies. Well, a chicken egg isn't anywhere near the mama, so that's what the yolk is it's all that good food for that baby. So that's what it lives on, and it grows up and it absorbs all that good stuff, which is pretty awesome. Now, you might think of the snot. If you've ever cracked open an egg and there's something that looks like snot on it, and you might be like, oh, the egg's bad, or oh, there's a worm in it, or oh, there should be a worm in it. But if it looks like that snot and it's kind of thick and it's light and white, that's okay. That's a normal part of every egg. The older the egg is, it kind of breaks down and you don't see it anymore. But if it's a really fresh egg, you see that. And that's called the chalaze. I could be mispronouncing that, but the chalaze. And what that does is when you have an egg, it basically holds, the yolk shouldn't be on any side. It doesn't drop down. We don't want all of our organs to fall down with gravity. It's the same thing with an egg yolk, that it helps the egg yolk stay in the center of the egg when it's in that shell. And the only thing not pictured here, of course, is the shell. Now, the really cool thing with eggshells is they can breathe, the chick can breathe through that eggshell. And in eggs, what you'll also see is as that chick is developing, there's something called an air cell that'll develop at the very bottom. And when a chick is ready to hatch, it pecks its way and it starts breathing through there, and then it pips open outside of the egg. And Miss Morgan says she has been hatching a ton of chickens. So hopefully she'll post a video of some of those chickens later on. I think she's got a whole mess of them, some little chickies as well. So I'm sure she'll post a video. It might be short just to show you some of those, but it's a really cool process. Speaking about hatching, do you guys want to see some hatching? So what I want to show you is we are going to start at the one and go backwards in time to look at kind of how evolution has worked. But let's start with you want to say chicken egg? I say it's a Firo egg. It's a Firo egg. So let's look at this. And this is super, super cool. This video was done by another professor. And this is actually going to be a chicken, or a chicken in your case and a Firo in my case, of a Firo that is able to develop as a Spiro without the eggshell. So this is actually inside of a cup, and it's alive the whole time, and it's in an incubator. It has to be at 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit for 21 days. So I'm gonna zoom out just a hair so that you guys can see some of the days. I might speed past some of the days because there's not a lot that happens, or not a lot of differences between some of the days. So this is day 1, and so there is the little embryo. Now it doesn't look like an embryo, but there's basically a mass of tissues. This is day 1, and it's almost a chick. It's not a chick just yet. Still day 2, not really a chick, doesn't have any blood, right? But there's gonna be blood that's gonna appear, and it's going to reach out and it's gonna absorb that yolk. Now the really cool thing, which I'll say after this because this is so cool, look at this. So on day 3, there are blood vessels and it has a heartbeat, which is the coolest thing in the world, that is a little baby and it's got that heartbeat. So the really cool thing is, just like we have belly buttons, you would look and say, oh, well, a chicken was and this is day 4, a chicken was not birthed like a human was, or like a dog or a horse or anything, but chickens have belly buttons. It's pretty cool. You can't really see it besides the first day or 2, but they have a belly button and an umbilical cord that attaches right here out to the blood vessels. So day 6, it has an eye, and it has little tiny limbs. And then I'm gonna skip ahead just a little bit because there's a lot of, cool things that happen. It starts moving around a little bit more. And then basically the next few days, this is day 8, it's gonna grow up a little bigger, and by day 12, it's moving around. It has a beak, and it has feet, and it's able to blink. You see it, blinking right there. And then we're at day 14, and it's got lots of thicker blood vessels, which is really, really cool. And then we're at day 15, and now you can see it's absorbing most of that yolk. So this is day 19. It's gonna get ready to hatch in about 2 days. So day 19, most of that yolk is absorbed, and most of the egg white has evaporated or it's taken it up inside. So day 20, basically what it's gonna do now is it's just getting all of its strength, because over the next day, if it had a shell, it would have to break through that shell with its beak. So this is day 21, and this is the day of its birth, but it's not really born because it's in a cup, but you'll see, and they're not really cute when they're first born, but after an hour or two they fluff out and they're super cute, and it's born! So if that isn't the cutest little thing. So it's got this big old belly, its umbilical cord is right about there, and that's all the egg yolk has absorbed up into it, and then give it an hour or two and it will fluff up to a cute little chick, and it'll keep fluffing up throughout the day, which is pretty awesome. So that is an example of a chicken, but let's take a look in the other direction and let's look at a pollywag. So this is how a tadpole develops. Now I want you, remember, we're always scientists, right? We're trainers, but we're also always scientists. And so what I want you guys to do here is I want you guys to look at what are some similarities, because even though you don't think of a frog and a bird being related, or a pollywag and a Pidgey being related, they are all related. So is a Charmander is a reptile, so they're all related, but which came first? Well, we have our fish. And fish and amphibians have very similar eggs. Of course, what's different is the feet and hands, and being able to walk on land. But of course, tadpoles can't walk on land. It takes them a while. They have to go through metamorphosis, just like a butterfly, to be able to walk onto land. And then, once you have an amphibian, well, amphibians still need to be near water. They need to lay their eggs in water. They still have nice, moist skin that they breathe through. They might breathe through their mouth, their gills in some species, like the axolotl or the mudkip. And they might also breathe through their skin, but that means they dry out really quickly. So then they evolve into reptiles. Reptiles have scales. They still lay eggs, but they don't need to lay them in water anymore, but they're really thin-shelled. Reptile eggs are very, very thin and soft. And then some reptiles became dinosaurs, and those are the fossils we have, which we sometimes resurrect, right? But we have dinosaurs. Now, most dinosaurs have died out, but they remain in birds. So all of the bird species of Pokemon came from the dinosaur species of Pokemon, which is really cool. And some reptiles became reptiles and just stayed the reptiles that we see. But then some reptiles actually became mammals. So there's a reptile called a Dermeptodon, which is the sail fin back. Let me see if actually, give me a second to look up a picture of that. But a Dermeptodon, I did not spell that correctly. That's what I meant, yes. So Dermeptodons, these animals. So this is actually where mammals came from, or these sail fin reptiles. So this is where mammals came from, and we know that because of their skulls. They have one hole in their skull for their jaw muscle to attach to, just like as humans and other mammals that we do. So we know that we came from reptiles, and if you look at a rattata's tail or a rat tail, you'll see they have scales on them, and the hairs pop up between the scales, which is really cool. Now feathers actually come from the scales. Feather is just a scale that's fluffed out, essentially. I know, stop talking. We want to see the polywags. Let's get to it. Doop, doop, boop. Okay, so we have here them developing, and they're still inside of the egg. This is 6 days, and they have a nice clear egg. Now you can see they have that nice long tail to them. And by day 14, they are ready to hatch. And so they're basically going to eat out the tip of the eggshell, or the egg, it doesn't have a shell, and then they're going to swim around, and that's your little tadpoles, and then they're going to metamorphosis. Now we say evolve, but in Miss Morgan's world, in the real world, they're going to metamorphosize. So they're the same animal, but they're going to start going through a second stage evolution. They're going to get legs. Oh, but only back legs. That's not going to help them on land, but they're going to get there. They have a bigger head, a bigger mouth. They still have that big tail. Oh, we almost got front legs. Oh, there we go, and then they spring out. So they've got one leg, boop, popped out. Now they still have that long tail, and they're going to have to get rid of that, and they're going to have to get bigger legs. But that basically looks like a frog with a tail. And so it's going to take them a few weeks. They're kind of able to get on land, but they're not able to go very far on land. But they're going to lose that tail, and they're absorbing all that nutrition back into the body, which is pretty awesome. And then they're ready to go on land. Alrighty guys, so I am going to be back with you guys in just a minute, but take a stretch break, and I'll see you in a few.